Hi guys, welcome to Real Talk with Way Changing Ministries. We hope you've been enjoying the last couple of videos that we've posted. And yeah, we are just here to chat today about continuing on with the 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And we've spoken so far about faith and hope. And today we're going to speak about love. Yeah. It's going to be fun. Are you guys excited?
Very, very excited.
Always.
I like it. Yay. Sounds good. Awesome. I will just read the verse again, just so that we know what we're reading through. So it's 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 13. And it says, until then, there are three things that remain: faith, hope, and love. Yet love surpasses them all. So above all else, let love be the beautiful prize for which you run. I'm not exactly sure what version that is in. It's a little bit more simple, actually, in the New King James Version. I might read that one as well. And now abide faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest of these is love. Yeah. Awesome.
I think the biggest point for me in that verse that stands out is the greatest of these three is love. And I mean, like, if we think about Christian lives or you think of your walk, faith and hope's a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Like, I mean, it's something that as Christians, we sort of strive to have a deeper, stronger faith.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that hope, like, I mean, at times where we might doubt in different circumstances, and then we sort of kick ourselves and like, damn it, I wish I had more faith and more hope in God and I trusted more.
Definitely.
But the fact that Paul brings out that love is more important than faith.
If you think about it, even in a world sense, like everyone is after love. Like everyone wants to be loved and wants to love. Like it's like we're built in with this like mechanism to love. Like it's built in us. So even if you don't believe in God, you still like crave that love, which, yeah, so it actually is a massive part of our lives, obviously. Like even if you think about like all the songs that are being written like these days, even throughout history, like they're all about love. Like most of them are about love. Like everyone wants it.
True. Would you reckon though that like a worldly understanding, a secular understanding of love is different to the love that Paul's speaking of, or would you say it's the same?
Totally different.
I mean, we all get love. Like we all experience love for our family, maybe our spouse, our siblings, all that sort of stuff. But love in general, how it's spoken about throughout Scripture, compared to how the songs are writing about love. I mean, most songs that mention love are also talking about a stripper on a pole and falling in love in the club and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, so you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just think it's almost like a contrast in difference with Paul and Usher.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, let's coin that. That's a quote, mate. I love it. So good.
I was actually thinking about this, about what is love. I don't know. I think of that song. I don't know if I'm quoting it right, but it says, "What is love, baby? Don't hurt me." And I'm just like, is it why should you be worried about getting hurt? Like, I mean, reading the Bible, reading all these stories, you see how God's love is something that people long for, and then this song just goes, "Oh, what is love, baby? Don't hurt me." It's like, oh, are you expecting to get hurt or something? Like, when you think of love, why are you saying don't hurt me? So it just confused me. So I was like, yeah, but I did have a thought on what is love. I was just thinking about it. I was like, I've always adopted that love is something where you give without expecting. But then as I thought about that, I was like, man, like surely it's okay to, well, not necessarily expect something, but to long for something. Like, I guess it's, love is something that you give without expecting, but it's okay for us to desire something in return. Like, I mean, when I was thinking about this, I thought of the the prodigal son and how the father, gave him freedom to do as he pleased, but he still waited outside for him to come back. So it was almost saying to me like, man, he gave something without expecting him to say, oh, you know what, I'm wrong, I'm going to come back. But rather he longed for him to come home, and it really made me think. It was like, hey, hang on, like, yes, love is giving without expecting, but it's okay for us to desire something in return, or to long for something in return, in the sense that, oh, we're still content if we don't get it, but rather it's okay for us to just yearn for these things in return, just like how the prodigal son's father longed for him to come back. So I guess there might be a difference between expecting and longing after you've given love. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think there's a difference between wanting something and longing for something?
I think there's that love that's almost completely selfless, which I think is very rare in humanity because we're so corrupt. But there is that love where you just want to give, and there is no expectation whatsoever. And I think the closest you can get to that is possibly maybe a parent with their child. Like a lot of the times, well, a baby, for instance, what can a baby give you back? The love and the care that a mother or a father will put into their child. And I think of that verse too, where I think it's in Ephesians 5. Remember, it says, where Paul said, "Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church." But then he makes the comment, "Wives, respect your husbands." And when you look at a husband and wife, and I'm speaking in general here, but a woman's greatest want in a man is love. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
and a man's
I agree.
and a man's greatest want from a woman is respect, as well as love. But there's that respect aspect to it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, unless the husband is giving love to the wife first, she won't give him respect. And so, but in order for the husband to give love, he needs to feel respected. So it shows you that circle going around. But just when you talked about like the difference between we give love and we want something back, I think there is always, in a way, an aspect of we expect something in return for love. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And even if I like think about my past, like even like I've always like had that feeling of just wanting to be loved, and it wasn't until I met Jesus and I really started feeling his love for me when I was like, yes, that is what I've been yearning for. So I think sometimes we can put expectations on receiving love in areas where we actually need to receive that from Jesus, because that's the perfect love. So like we have like flaws in our version of love, or the way we give and receive love is very flawed, but we're always yearning for that feeling of just being so loved. And that's what you get when you meet Jesus. You're like, he just loves me so much. And then that kind of like whole is complete. And I feel like then it allows you to give love freely without the things, like without expecting things in return. Does that make sense? So you can long for it, but maybe not expect it.
Love it. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, God is good. I think I had a similar experience, when I first encountered Jesus for myself, and it's sort of it's like fulfilling something. It's like that void where you've been trying to fill it up with something else, but then when Jesus comes in, it almost, you see his love, and just like it motivates you to do something for him. It's in response rather than something like I know, growing up in the church, things like that, we know what to do, we know the right things to do, but there's sort of that I had that more, it was doing it out of obligation type of thing, like doing it because I have to. But then it wasn't until I saw that, man, God gave his son, while we were still sinners. I think it's Romans 5 verse 8. And that was just like, man, even when we were against God, he still gave. And it's like, man, as you were saying, with flaws and our faulty love, sometimes it's hard for us to give, to someone who's against us. Like, oh, what's the point of that? Like, I'm not giving to someone who's going against me. But then when I read this verse and when I understood God's unconditional love, it was like, man, this is so powerful. God gave it to me while I was against him, or while I wasn't even on his team. And then when I understood that, I was like, man, this type of love is something that wants me to do something for him. It motivates me. It just comes into my heart, so then I can just go, man, I'm responding to this love which you gave freely. And now because of the love that you have given me, it motivates me and it makes me do something. And I think it leads to obedience. I know this. There's a verse I think it's in John, where it says, Jesus talks about himself when he's uplifted, he will draw all men to himself. Yes, and it's like that love draws people instead of pushes people. And before I met Jesus, I was almost doing things because guilt, or because you want to make it to heaven, or if you want to say it that way, it's almost like pushing me into doing these things for him. But now when I understood his love, or understood who he is, it just drew me into doing these things. So I think it really draws this maybe a message for us, that it's that love draws, and it does not push people into obedience, but it draws people into his presence. So yeah,
that's awesome. So
I think it becomes like, oh, sorry, go right.
Oh no, I was just going to say it kind of. Oh, sorry. I really like how you said, Carlos, about how I guess it's so easy for us just to do things without the love component because we feel like we have to. And I feel like that's literally what this whole chapter 13 is talking about. Like, it actually goes into the whole, though love never fails, but whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. So it's almost like we can do all these things, but without love, it means nothing. And so, if we're literally just doing things just to be in the good books, or to get 5 stars with God or whatever, then it's like it's meaningless. It's useless. Whereas that love component, it makes us want to do those things, and it is the most important thing out of all of that. You can't do any of those things without love and it be effective for God's kingdom.
I would add too, the natural response to God and to his love, to Jesus, it shouldn't be a burdensome. We shouldn't feel like we need to be obligated to do work. And the question that I would ask everybody listening is, if you feel that obligation is the number one thing, and it is not a natural response, then perhaps you haven't fully experienced the love of Christ. Because when we truly experience the love of Christ, it flows out of us. Like, what did Jesus say? He said that we become springs of living water. That stuff can't be stopped. It just happens. And I asked the question not to dishearten anyone, but to really check ourselves on that, because I think that's a really key part and a big indicator whether we're on the right track.
Yeah, I know when because I'm a bit of a runner too, and I run a couple Ks. But when I first started running, it was like, oh, I'm going out to run because I have to keep fit. It was almost like I was, to just avoid getting unfit, I would run so then I could get fit. It was like me being unfit was pushing me into running. And then once I was doing that, I was like, man, this is like, I've heard of people enjoying running, and me, man, this is not enjoyable. Like, I'm almost running with the wrong motivation. I'm running with a motivation just to prevent me from getting something unpleasant. And when I thought about that, it's like, but now when I run, man, I love running because running is something that I like to do. Running is something that I enjoy doing, and I'm sure you can relate, Ray. With your fitness things, doing things in fitness is just something that you enjoy. It's and when I think of this, it's I think of a verse in Psalms 119 in verse 16, and it says, I delight in your decrees, I will not neglect your word. And it's almost like we the guy who's speaking here, he's saying, I enjoy doing your decree. I enjoy doing the things you have asked me to do. And like when I finally understood, man, running is something that I should be enjoying. It's like you were saying, bro, and it shouldn't be something that is burdensome to us. That's something that's just like, oh, I have to do this again. Or like even like, but yeah, when it says here, I delight in your decrees, it's like, man, I enjoy doing this. This is something that makes me happy in a sense. This is something that gives me joy to do. And I think once we experience that, we can, like I experienced loving running, we can love to do the law. And I think that comes when we know who God is, when we know who he is, when we understand his character of love, it almost says, man, you're such a great person that I love who you are. And because of who you are, I will do as you say, because what you say is good for me. Therefore, I will serve you with my whole heart. So yeah, I think delighting or enjoying doing what God wants for us begins when we understand who he is and what he has done for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen.
I was going to say, what's that verse? I delight to do your will, O God. Your law is written in my heart. I think it was David who said that. I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, write that in the comments. But
I love that.
But I think when it comes to doing God's will, it really, I just can't stress enough that I just know with my experience, the times that burdensome where God's work felt burdensome to me was when I was probably a little bit distant from God. I wasn't taking part in my devotions. I wasn't praying as much. Maybe I was too busy watching a series instead of like focusing my mind on heavenly topics and things. And only then does it become a burden, or it becomes a chore, if you will. Whereas, when you're in that vibrant and living walk, and it's active and present, I think my problem is pulling myself up. Like, I just want to keep going and doing more and more and more. And it's like, hang on, God wants me to be balanced. He wants me to, spend time with my family and all these different things. And I think it just shows you the two opposite ends. So I really like that verse that you shared, Carlos. I think that hits the nail on the head.
I was just going to also say, like, personally, I agree with you, Broden. And in the times where I'm not feeling like, I don't know, maybe I'm not spending as much time in devotions or in his word. And I'm definitely like, my attitude towards other people is not so loving. Like, I may be less patient, less kind with my words. And I can tell straight away, I'm like, wow, I need some Jesus time. Like, straight up, I'm just like, okay, give me my Bible, let me go off, like, in my own little sweet secret place with the Lord, and then he can fill me up again. And as soon as he fills me up again, it's like, yeah, ready to go show his love to the world again. So I definitely agree with you. It's
Hallelujah.
so easy to do that. Like, it's so easy to start like slipping down by accident, and then just pulling yourself up, spending time in the word, and Bob's your uncle. You're ready to go again.
Bob's your uncle.
Aussie as mate.
Yeah, I can relate with that. I recently got a new job doing retail, but I used to work in a warehouse, and it was the same people every day. But now doing retail, you come across different customers, angry customers, frustrated customers, impatient customers, and then you get the other side. The happy customers, the talkative customers, and all these different people. I'm just like, man, Jesus, you need to be in my heart, because if it was just me without you, I'm just going to reply to this guy saying, "No, you get what you get. You get what you want. Like, I'm not here for
Carlos is going to tear them up."
But because of how Jesus has treated us, and now what Jesus has done for those in the past, we can say, man, it's almost enjoyable working with these, or working for these impatient people, in the sense, because you become more empathetic for them. Like, you think, man, maybe they just had a bad day, maybe they just wake up on the wrong side of the bed, if that's what the saying is. But when you experience the love of God, you you sort of see people how he sees people. You know, he doesn't see what we see straight away, an angry person, impatient person, that person who's there, but he sees beyond that. He sees a person who is broken, a person who's burdened, and a person who needs rest. And I think that's why he calls for us to come unto him, you know, all who are weary and burdened, so we can lay our burdens upon him and he can give us rest. And I think that's what love is. You know, it's reflecting who Jesus is. And when I come into these people who are impatient or who are a bit angry at times, now that I know that Jesus has carried my burdens, now I can help carry theirs in the sense, and help, you know, reflect who he is because of his love for me. So yeah, with this whole love of understanding who Jesus is, and doing my own personal devotions too, getting to know Jesus more helps me to reflect him more, and helps me to reflect to others, so then I can be more patient at work when I'm encountering angry and impatient customers. But that's not all customers, you know, that's just some customers. Yeah.
True. Hey, and that's like, it's such a real battle. I mean, you know, a lot of the time as Christians, a lot of people go into Christianity and they think, you know, I'm a whole new creature. Like, yeah, sure, that might be true, but you still have the carnal nature to contend with. And man, if we're not present with God, seeking his spirit in our hearts daily, we're going to have big trouble contending with with ourselves. And we're going to be at war with ourselves. So, Carlos, I think that's really cool, man. The fact that, you know, like with work, you get the Holy, you seek God to help you, because, yeah, I mean, I've been in that situation too, not in a retail scene, but in a factory scene, and it can get hard sometimes. It can get real hard sometimes.
There are times, you know, when I go to the back room and I, you know, just, oh man, why did you have to do that? But you know, you catch yourself in the sense saying, oh, actually, maybe I could have been more patient. Maybe I could have been more thing. But then, you know, the more you work with God, the more you walk with God, the stronger you get. So
that's it, man. It's all part of growth. I mean, and that's the thing. I think, you know, I think there's little things that we'll always trip up on. But it's all right. We learn from it and we move and we grow from that, just like what you said. But hey, I just wanted to share something quickly from 1 John 4:7-8, going back to our text before we finish up. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. Now, the reason why this text stood out to me is the fact that Paul mentions that love is the most vital thing. It's the most important, yeah? He specifies that. And just with the comments that I made at the start about how faith and hope is still such an important aspect in the Christian walk. Well, when we look at the word love and when we look at what love is, I think it's really much the foundation of faith and hope. And what I mean by that is, without love, you won't have faith. You won't have hope, because it's through your relationship with God, that love that's there, that establishes those two components in your walk. However, one thing too that I was thinking about, and I can reflect with this. I also made a comment that when we have like faith, or when we have issues of faith, and we're like, oh man, I wish my faith walk was stronger, or I wish I had more faith in God here, or you know, I'm sure we can all look back on some point in our lives. I wish I had enough faith to move this mountain here in front of me, and then we try doing some weird thing with our hands. No, I'm just joking. But the point is, one thing that I've always noticed through my history of drug addiction and everything like that, when we focus on the problem per se, I don't feel like we move much. Whereas when we focus on God, so instead of, I'll give you a quick example. When I was trying to get rid of cigarettes and alcohol, I kept praying daily, God, help me quit this, please. help me quit this. And then after a while, I just felt like a broken record. I just kept repeating the same thing. And then every night I would kneel by my bed, disheartened, because I'm like, oh, Lord, I'm just here again repeating the same thing. But I know tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do it all over again.
Mm.
And it got to a point where I was like, what's the point of praying? Because I know I'm just going to do this again.
Mm.
And I remember listening to something where it was like, we need to change our focus in prayer. And so what I started doing is I started praising God in my prayer and more focusing on my walk with Him. And so what I started doing is when I was praying, I was saying things like, thank you, God, that you are strong when I am weak.
Mm.
And I was bringing in praise aspects into my prayer. And I also said, I was real with God, and I'm just like, Lord, you know I want to do these things. But I need you to change me. I need you to change my mindset, change my heart, give me new desires. And the point is, as I focused on the love that God had and my walk with Him, those other components in my walk grew naturally and by themselves.
Mm.
And so I think one thing that Paul's trying to bring out here is that the reason why love is the greatest is because if you're a Christian that's struggling with faith or struggling with your hope, you can keep focusing on that, and you 10 years later you'll probably still be saying, "Oh, I wish I had more faith. I wish I had more hope." But if your focus is purely on the love of God and I want to grow with you, I want to I want to experience you in awesome ways, and you just want to be like this with God, then that faith and that hope is going to grow and increase naturally if you put love first.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my
That's
little
so good.
spill. Yeah.
And that makes sense because in that verse you read out at the end of it, Broden, it says God is love. Like that's who God is. Like God is love. So it makes total sense. If you're concentrating on God and being filled with God, then that's the love. Like that's love, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah. So if you want love, that's God.
Yeah. If you want love, you're seeking God. Like, yes,
yeah.
amen.
I mean, it reminds me of the story of Peter walking on the water. When he focused on the clouds and on the storm, he sunk. But when he focused on Jesus, that was when he was able to walk towards him. So I think it's a great message for us that we need to focus on Jesus, not focus on the storm, not focus on anything around, but focus on Jesus, walk closer and closer towards him, and he'll draw near to you. I think Hebrews 12 is a great verse where it says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. When we focus on Jesus, his love comes into us so that we can reflect it to others and we can pour out to others. And they may be drawn to him. Amen.
Amen. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that's all we can do today. So thank you for joining us on today's episode, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or on Instagram. Give us a like, follow, share, comment any questions that you have. And we will see you all next week. Bye for now.
Bye.